chair, the first thing that I would like to do is, I just have to hit continue. The thing that I would like you to do is to first see, how are you sitting when you sit there? Are you sitting comfortably? Are you anxious? Are you relaxed? Are you pleased to be there? Are you surprised to be there? Notice the expression on your face. Notice what your body language may be conveying. And just take a minute or two to just look. Then notice what feelings arise in you as you look at yourself in the other chair. You feel comfort, you feel discomfort, pleasure, surprise, anxiety, appreciation. Just notice what feelings come up and then see what thoughts emerge. And then finally, I'm going to invite you to say either out loud or silently a sentence or two of whatever comes up, whatever feels spontaneous and natural in this moment. Just see what you want to say to yourself, that self that's sitting in the chair opposite you. And again, if you want to say it silently or if you want to say it out loud, whatever. Now, if you can just let your eyes close for a very brief time and just notice what feelings have emerged and if there's any change in perception that you have of yourself in this moment. And just let your mind run over that, preferably with your eyes closed, but not necessarily. Just what emotions have come up. And are there any changes in perception of yourself, any surprises or confirmations? And then what I'd like you to do is just write one or two words that describes your experience of what for some of you may be your first empty chair experience. Just a couple of words, just put it into the group chat, and this will give me some idea of what your experience was. I'm really touched seeing these coming in. It's actually very, very moving, and I'm glad that most of you have had a positive or pleasant experience, most of you. And I'm also glad to see that someone said sad, and that's okay. So as you've seen, these can be very, very powerful experiences. I'm going to just take a minute now to tell you very briefly a little bit about myself related to action techniques. More years than I wish ago, I had a National Institute of Mental Health postdoctoral fellowship in Washington, D.C., a fabulous experience where I studied psychodrama and then a few years later became a trainer and educator and practitioner, and I've been running training workshops in over 30 countries, delivering training in psychodrama, and in Sydney have been on several faculties of Gestalt training institutes. So that's the essence of my professional training in this. The word emotion is derived from the Latin word to move. And it's interesting that we use that word in two different ways, that people will talk about something and we can say we were moved, meaning that we were touched emotionally by it. But it's also our emotions that move us. They move us into action and into change. If we feel fear, we run. If we feel need for connection, loneliness, sadness, we may seek out comfort, or we may have learned to isolate and all the space in between. But they move us. So when I talk about action techniques with stuck clients, these techniques are very powerful because they help people, as you experience, to get in touch with emotions that they may have either separated themselves from, numbed up, shut down, or have discovered one level of feeling that actually masks or blocks the expression of another. Very often, anger is very relatively comfortable for most people, not everyone, because it leaves them feeling invulnerable and protects them from the underlying feelings of fear, loss, sadness, grief, shame. And so when we are using action techniques, we are trying to unstick, in a sense, our clients by helping them move to maybe even experience emotions or move to deeper emotions. And the other thing that happens is people get a change in perception. You may have experienced this already in looking at yourself in the empty chair, but I'm going to demonstrate very briefly some uses and the ways that these led to changes in perception. Now, I'm actually going to illustrate with actual clients, and I may or may not change the gender, certainly have changed the names so that they remain anonymous. And assisting me in this is Fred. And Fred, as I hope that you can see, I'll bring him a little closer, is very, very happy. And he better be, because he's been in therapy with me for 15 years. And if he was depressed, like I first met him, he was very inflexible, quite rigid, and very stuck. He could hardly move at all. But now he's got some flexibility and so on. He is, however, still in therapy with me because, as you can see, he insists on wearing this red tie and is terribly over-identified with Donald Trump. So I think once we get through this, then we'll be able to say goodbye to each other. But he's agreed to assist and to help out here. Now, most people, when they start out using an empty chair as a therapist, will say, yeah, but Ari, how do you do it? How do you do it? There are two ways. There are many ways. The easiest is that usually in the second session, I will say to clients, you see that chair over there? Sometimes I use that. And the way that I use it is that you may be talking about someone or something that's important to you that you feel emotional about or maybe stuck in some way. And I'm going to invite you to just, instead of telling me about it, to just speak to the empty chair. And this situation arises, then we'll do it. And of course, it's voluntary. And if you start and you want to stop, you can at any time. So I always give that assurance. The second way to do it is the way that I'm going to do it with Fred. And this is how it actually got introduced with Fred. Fred was talking to me and saying, Ari, I'm really having a terrible time with my boss. She is so critical. She never, ever gives any affirmation, appreciations, or anything. And I said, Fred, instead of telling me about this, what I'd like you to do is just see your boss, Sue, sitting in this empty chair over here. And Fred looks at me as if I'm crazy and says, yeah, okay. So I say, how's she sitting? And he tells me she's got her arms folded, she's got her legs crossed, and she's looking pretty severe. I said, do you think she wants to be here? Nope, she did not want to be here. And I don't either, he says. I said, okay, I can understand that. But you were telling me that she is critical, that she never gives you any affirmation, any appreciation. So just try it out and see how it is to say that. He looks at me and says, I don't have to say it to her in real life, do I? I say, that's entirely up to you. So he turns to her and says, Sue, I work really hard here. I don't think you have any idea how hard I work. And you never, ever show any appreciation for what I do. You don't acknowledge it. All you ever do is. And he stops, his head goes down, and I'm thinking, what's happening? He turns to me and he said, and his voice just breaks a little bit, and this is a guy who has not shown emotion before. He says, I can't believe it. When I was a teenager, that's exactly what I said to my mother. So I say, okay, we're going to keep Sue in that chair. We're just going to move her back a little bit, and we're going to put your mom in this chair now. See what you say to her. His head goes down. He turns to me and says, I don't think I can do this. I'm going to break down. His head goes down, and he starts to cry. And I just stay there with him. I don't hurry him. I don't push him to do anything. Just stay with him. Tell him it's okay. Then he looks at me and he says, this is important. I need to tell her this. Mom, when I was a teenager, I tried so hard. You were all by yourself. Dad left. And I was the oldest son. And I tried so hard to fill in, to do things for you, to help out, to do all those chores. And all you could ever point out was what I didn't do right, what I'd forgotten to do. And, you know, I would come home after school, leave my friends earlier, just to try to help you and support you. You never, ever, ever acknowledged it or told me how much you appreciated it. And that hurt me. And you remember how angry and resentful I was through my teenage years? That's why I could never let you see my hurt. But it did. And then he paused and he said, wow, I never thought I could do that, but I feel better. He said, okay, now take a look at your mother. What's happening over there? And he says, oh, she looks sad. And I said, does that surprise you? Yeah, I never saw her. She was just sad. She was just, except when my dad left. But once she got through that, she was just tough. Okay, would you like to reverse roles? Which means that Fred is going to stop being Fred. He's going to go over here and become his mother. And now he's going to talk to himself as his mother. She says, I'm so sorry. And you're right. It was so hard for me. There were 4 other kids. Lots of times your dad wouldn't even pay the child support. It was really tough, and I guess I was angry and hurt, and this isn't how my life went, but I want to tell you now, you saved me. And I'm so regretful, sorry, and I'm so glad you told me. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you. You made a big difference. And then I say, okay, Mom, anything else you want him to know? And she looks at him. And Fred's face has gotten soft at this point, as his mom. Yes, I'd like him to know that I love him. Now notice Fred is telling this to me, not to himself from his mom. So I say, Mom, I think Fred would really like to hear that directly from you. Yep, I can tell him. And she does. And it's very moving again. Reverse back, and I say, anything you want to say, do. And he says, if she were here, I'd give her a hug. So I'm just going to open my arms and pretend I'm hugging her, and that's it. And then I say, and I just let that rest for a minute or two, well, probably like 30 seconds. Don't forget, Sue is waiting on the side there. Bring Sue back. He does a little bit more work with that. So this is one very powerful way that you can use the empty chair, and it really does help to unstick. Now, I don't want you to think that every time you use it, you're always going to get that level of emotional involvement and expression. But as you get more comfortable with it, and your clients do, you will find that this can be quite powerful. The other thing is that I imagine that as I was doing this, some of you thought about your own relationship with important figures in your own life. And this is a secondary power of these kinds of action techniques. That if you're doing this with more than one person in the room, it often can bring up issues, memories for them, and including yourself as a therapist. So it's a very powerful way, and you just have to make sure that you're dealing with your countertransfer issues or the issues that this can bring up. So I'm just going to pause here for a couple of seconds, and just any, again, comments that you have about what you saw. Just put them in the chat room.
Okay. Why am I getting this noise every time I
I don't want to be on the screen. Can you put your finger?
Can you hear me? Yep. Okay. There's some wonderful comments here that are coming in. And somebody asked if I could just explain what role reversal was. So role reversal is when your client is speaking to, let's say in this case, their boss. And role reversal is when you have them move from their chair into their boss's chair. They reverse roles. They're no longer themselves. They have become their boss, and they speak as their boss or whoever else was in that empty chair. And then when you reverse roles back, then they move back to being themselves. And you always end an action technique with the person back as themselves. Okay, I'm going to do this very briefly because time is running out. Here is, oh, what a coincidence. They almost look like twins. Here is a client that I had who not long ago came in and said, I am so angry with this government. I am struggling, and because I didn't qualify for JobKeeper, because I fell outside of it, I'm just so angry. And she was very used to action techniques. She said, I want to put this government in the empty chair. And I said, can you see it? Yep, I can. What shape is it? She said, it's amorphous, and it's like smoke. It's sometimes black and dense and thick, and you can't penetrate it. And sometimes it's just so spread out and unclear. And I just want to speak to the government. And so she tells them how angry she is, that she's got children, she's trying to keep her business going, and she missed out, and how angry she is. She can hardly cope, hardly manage. And when she reversed roles, it was astonishing what she said. She said, well, I'm sorry that you're having so much trouble, but just think about this. You've got 5 kids that you can hardly manage. I've got 20 million. That's 5 million times what you've got to deal with. And trying to please everybody is impossible. And she was just amazing as the government. And then when she reversed back, she said, I have a lot more compassion for you, and I hope that you will for me. And we then talked about it a bit. So you now have your worksheets. And what I would like you to do is to take about 8 minutes or so and just do the worksheet, and then going to ask you after about 8 minutes, I think Carmen will call you back into breakout rooms where you'll have a chance to talk about 3 things. One is, how did you find this experience in terms of emotions and perceptual change? 2 is, how will you apply it to your current or future clients? And thirdly, when you think about applying it, what challenges do you face? What scares you? What excites you? And how will you overcome these challenges? So if you do this for about 5 or 6 minutes, the worksheet, and then into your breakout rooms, and I'll be back in about 16 minutes so that we can see what questions there are.
So Ari, I'll just interject there at say 7 minutes past, I'll be putting everyone into breakout rooms. Could I ask, when we put you into the breakout rooms, that you make sure that you activate your video? It's a bit disconcerting for people to have group members in the breakout rooms when they can't see them. That would be appreciated. Thank you.
Have fun.
Hello? Hello? Hi, can you hear me?
Hello. What? I can hear you.
I don't know how I keep getting muted, but I do. Yes, I could hear you.